Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to VMware Communities Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 659. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today I have my favorite co-host, Corey Romero. Today is Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. Corey, how are you doing today?
Eric, I'm doing great. Doing absolutely great. Everything, weather here in Utah is fabulous and starting to cool down for sure.
Nice. We're also more nice here. Nice August. It's not too hot, not too cold, like in the 70s, right? 68 at night, 75, 78 during the day. You can't ask for that. Blue skies, and the color of the bay in the Bay Area is just a nice, deep, rich green, right? Smooth and pretty and muddy as always, but pretty people are out sailing in the bay, so it is beautiful to go out. We're getting that classic California August, but without, or I guess now early September, without the huge heat wave. We haven't had any big heat waves this year. So on this show today, we're going to be talking to community extraordinary guy, blogger, and hackathon second place winner, Dale Hassinger. Dale's going to be on the show. We're going to talk to him. But before we do that, I guess we'll just do some of the news. Mr. Romero, obviously we have VMworld Europe coming up, which we are getting the code sessions and the V Brown Bag sessions. V Brown Bag still has some session openings, so if you're listening to this in Europe and you're interested in doing a community talk at the community booth, it's going to be crowded and busy. We're doing the tool studio, the labs, as well as the community booth area. So if you remember in 2019 how big that was, we're going to do the similar thing in Europe this year, so should be fun. I think there are some slot openings for both Code and V Brown Bag, so go submit to V Brown Bag if you're interested in doing a community talk, and then Code, there is somewhere on the website you can submit for a Code talk as well for Europe, so looking forward to that. Corey, what else is going on?
You know, I actually got some really good news this morning. So I've got a couple opportunities for vExperts, and I just sent out an email about 5 minutes ago. I have 5 speaker passes for vExperts. 3 are going to be dedicated for sessions. So we have the sessions for Explore, and we need some vExperts to go and verify the technical level of these sessions. There's about 250 of them, and so I'm looking for 3 vExperts to help me with that. And those vExperts will have a session of theirs approved. I'm also looking for 2 other vExperts who can join me on my community panel that I did in Las Vegas. Going to go do it again in Barcelona, and so I'm looking for 2 vExperts to join me there and to share your story on how you became, just part of a VMware customer all the way to vExpert, and how that helped your career. So look for that email, and also there is a last chance. Go fill out the form for your licenses. So for those folks who were new to the program for the second half that didn't have their account set up correctly, that form is there for you to go fill out, and we'll get licenses pushed out next week.
Nice. Yeah, looking forward to the whole setup. And I got to do a shout out to, I think it's Singapore. I think there's a VMworld happening at the end of this month, the end of September for, I think it is Singapore. And then I think there's one in South America at some point coming up as well. But what we're planning for is the Barcelona one, which is always our big one, expecting over 10,000 people there, just like we had in the US. So excited about that coming up.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right, with that, let's introduce our guest who has been waiting patiently. Dale, how we do this on the community podcast is, because we are a community podcast, we usually will introduce you and say, hey, tell us about your career arc. How did you get here, right? Spend a few minutes introducing yourself and where you work, what do you do, what's your career position, but then more importantly, what's your journey through the land of computer science? And I know we live stream on vBarbecue, youtube.com/vBarbecue. If you want to see what Dale looks like, his video will be up there. And I see a racing game set in the background as well. So we got to talk a little bit about what your office looks like. That looks pretty nice. So Dale, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I've been a listener for many years, so to join on a session is kind of exciting for me. So thank you.
Yeah.
Currently, I do work at VMware. I'm a senior cloud solutions architect. So I cover the Southeast United States with healthcare with all the Aria products.
Nice. Nice.
And before that, and I just started this role. So for the past year, my first year at VMware, I was a technical adoption manager. So VMware had a customer that wanted a TAM that was dedicated to the Aria product. So instead of being a core TAM, my role was to help them use, automation, operations, and log insight to its, biggest potential. So they had me come on as a dedicated TAM to help them with that.
That sounds neat. I was looking at a CTAB attendee list the other day, just as an aside, and I think the number one set of customers that came to CTAB was financial, but then the number two is healthcare, right? So we were talking about like a third of the attendees were actually healthcare. Another little over a third was finance, and then the spattering of everybody else. So we were commenting on how healthcare seems to be a sweet spot for VMware in the integrated marketing slots. So yeah, cool. Right. So what did you do before you ended up at VMware?
So yeah, before VMware, I did work in healthcare IT it was over 10 years, and talking about the community. So I started out like most people. I would attend local VMUGs, and in healthcare, they have like what they call an HVC, which is the healthcare virtualization community. So it's like a VMUG but dedicated to healthcare. So in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, all the different healthcare groups would come together, and we would share how we used the VMware products, and people would give demos of how they're using the products within their environments. And so that's where I first started doing my presenting then. I was like, you hear this story all the time. You go and you're participating a little bit, and you're like, you know what, I could give a presentation about what we do. So I was asked to do a presentation about the automation, and that went really well. And then I just stayed involved with the community. And then they also started doing, when COVID, like in 2020, COVID hit, we started doing what they called power blocks within that same community. So people would present on different topics, and it was over Zoom. So I did a lot there again on automation, and then also operations, showing dashboards, everything we were doing in our environments. So then in I think it was 2021, I did my first V Brown bag at VMworld when it was still called that. So I did have a brief V Brown bag. So that was kind of my first chance to talk to a bigger audience. So doing the V Brown bag was pretty neat. And then in 2021, I was asked to do a it was still called VMworld at the time. I did a session on SaltStack config. So VMware was looking for a customer that was using the SaltStack config with Microsoft Windows servers, because in healthcare, you'll still find that they're still very heavy on Windows servers. So to have a customer that was using that product to do configuration management with Windows was a lot of interest for other customers. So I did that presentation with Vince Riccio, and that went really well. So then that same year, they still had the SALT conference. So Vince and I kind of did the same presentation, but updated it a little bit, and we did the SALT conference together. And then this year, I got to go to VMware Explore, and because I got a session accepted in the Code Theater, so that was a new experience for me. And those sessions were all very well attended. I attended some myself to watch because, being as part of automation to see how people did all the different code was very, very interesting for me. So even presenting, like I said, I sat through quite a few sessions as an attendee. So that was good. It was well attended. Had some friends there, some customers. Some of my new customers came. After the session was over, quite a few people came up to me and asked me for my contact information to reach out to me afterwards to, if they had any questions. So that was some really good feedback. And then I was also part of the hackathon this year.
Yeah, I gotta say that the Code Theater was a buzz this year, right? Like I
Yeah.
felt like it was crowded every single session. Like the V Brown Bag was crowded on, when you had a great speaker, it was packed standing room only. Where I noticed that the Code Theater was pretty full and standing room only. Like 70% of the time, there were people standing around. There were no more seats left, and it was impressive to see that. Plus, what you didn't see was we had a 5 or 6 other code sessions that were just in general 200-person session rooms. So, and those were packed as well, right? Like William Lamb did one for Home Labs, and Frank Denneman did one for CPU, I think, or something like. So there were some pretty interesting things, but it was crowded. Code was the place to hang out. I felt like it had a lot of momentum.
Yeah, every seat was full in every session that I attended, and you put a lot of time into doing these presentations, and I wasn't sure if my topic was of interest, but it was full. Every seat was full, standing room only. So it makes it makes you feel good when the people want to show up and have an interest in whatever your topic that you pick.
Yes.
My topic was how to use the Aria suite, which is, the automation, the Aria automation config, and then also operations to create VMs on-prem in your own vCenter, but also in a cloud. And I used Azure as my example. It could have been AWS or any of the other ones to show how that one install will allow our customers to build anywhere, and then to do configuration management, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. You could do that. And then also had some sample dashboards of how you could monitor both locations at the same time. What the feedback I got from some of the attendees was, we always, kind of talk about the multi-cloud, but to see a nice working demo that I had set up in my lab was very helpful for them to see. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, I gotta say the code sessions, we didn't have enough slots for all the submissions, right? So we actually had to go through and like read through them and figure out who we were going to call out and who we weren't. And I remember looking at yours and I went, ooh, automation, first off, scripting, PowerShell, whatever it was you were scripting. I was like, okay, let's go Aria. And then secondly, you also did it in Azure, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like somebody did it, not just AWS, but they actually automated and connected to Azure. So I remember accepting that one and going, yeah, that's a win, right? We'll take that because that one just is good. And it's not like the same thing that everybody else is talking about, right? Like, so we try to, get rid of duplicates. So yours was a good, solid, unique one as well. So good deal.
Yeah. And like I said, on the config side, to be able to show how to use automation config with Windows servers, like I did 2 years ago. And there's been some advancement in the product. It makes it easier to install the minion and to do your state files and stuff. So since it was a code theater, I went through and dug through my YAML code for the templates, and I dug through the state files, and I showed all the different steps. And that was good.
Yeah, it was. Yep, it was a great session to have you there. One of the questions I have for you, you're doing the hackathon, you're doing these sessions. Like, how do you find time? Because this isn't your day job, right? Like, this is like stuff that you're doing outside to feed back to the community. How do you find? When do you do this? Do you get like 4 a.m. and you usually like 4 hours and hack on stuff, or do you do it on the weekend? Do you have like slow weekends? How do you manage to carve out the time to do it?
Evenings and weekends. It's just something I enjoy. When you write a blog and somebody reaches out to you from other countries, I've had people reach out to me from Australia or over in Europe and ask me questions about some of my blogs. It's good feedback, and it kind of makes you feel good. VMware is a worldwide company, and sometimes kind of forget about that. But when somebody reaches out to you from Australia and you know, 7 o'clock my time, I'll do a Zoom session with them, and it's the next morning for them, and we'll talk about how to do some automation or whatever they have questions about. It's just, I don't know, just to help others, giving back to the community, like we always talk about, is just it's a good feeling at the end of the day. So yeah, weekends, I'll take a couple hours.
Weekends, evenings,
Yeah.
right?
I always say, 9 to 5 pays the bill, but 5 to 10 advances your career.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's actually a great one. And I tell my wife that, right? I'm like, you're always hacking on stuff. You got hardware, you got this, you got that. You're always crafting up ideas to do cool things with the community, whatever. Like you just don't stop. And I'm like, yeah, but this is all paid off because I still have a job, right? And I love the job and I love working with people. And I'm kind of a people person. And there's also a bit of me that I want to say maybe I'm stupid, right? Like maybe I'm just not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And this is a little belittling, but I'll say this in a sense of that I've always needed help on technical stuff, right? Like I always need help. Like I am not like a, rocket scientist where I always need help, right? And so when you've needed help running things or building things or writing things, it's like, you tend to want to help others when you figure it out, right? Because you're like, oh, I wasn't smart enough to do this on my own, but once I've accomplished it, I want to show every other person out there how to do it because it was a struggle for me to figure out how it all works. And so I just want to make sure that everybody else doesn't have to have quite the same struggle, right? And then of course, when I'm struggling, I have to reach out to other people and they help me. So I think maybe that's almost a fundamental piece of being a great community person, is that you kind of needed help along the journey and then you wanted to help others. And I think that's one class of people. Then there's the other class like William Lamb and Frank Denman and Duncan Epping, who are just brilliant, but somehow like to give back as well, right? So maybe it's a combination of a collection of everybody, but I find like for me, I like helping people because I felt like I always needed a lot of help. So that's my 2 cents.
After I started as an employee, what drives my topics now are questions that I receive from our customers. So if I get a question from a VMware customer how to do something with automation or operations, if I can't find it in the standard documentation, I'll go through the process in my lab, and then I'll blog about it, because my attitude is, this probably isn't the only customer that has that same question, so why not share it with the community? I never really say who the customers are that ask the questions, so I kind of make it more, neutral that way. But I'm just hoping that somebody else will learn from what we did together, as when I worked with the customer.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting about this whole space is the satisfaction you get when accomplishing something, right? And getting it and then writing it down and describing how you accomplished it. I went bouldering, and I'm way too heavy to be bouldering, but this is like mini rock climbing walls and gyms where you had these 40-foot rock climbing, and then you had to rope yourself in and somebody would hold you while you climbed to the top of this big wall. But bouldering is like only a 12-foot high and big, thick mats. So you don't have any ropes. There's nobody helping you. You just go at it, and they put different colored grippers on the wall so you know where you're supposed to be going, and they have different levels. Like the pink level's level 1. It's easy, or for somebody that's skinny, it's easy. For me, I could barely do it. But what I'd say is when you get to the top of that and you finish that level and you get to the top thing, you get an adrenaline shot, like, oh, I accomplished it. So classic gamification. And I would say that getting systems to behave and to accomplish setting up and making it automate and controlling things and making it easier and then locking it down, there is a very satisfying element of being able to do this and then share it with others. So I would say that it's kind of like rock climbing. When you get to the top of it, you're like, I did it. And it's literally only 5 feet tall and I'm really heavy. So it wasn't a big accomplishment, but for me it was. And so I feel like community giving back is the same kind of thing, where you have these tasks, you have things. Now you get customers sending in, levels that you get to go try to solve. And then there must be a reward for you when you do accomplish that.
Oh yeah. I mean, today I had a call with a customer. They're starting their journey in automation. they already had a lot of existing scripts in their environment. So I sat down with them and I showed them how they could use existing scripts and just front end it with some nice catalog items in Aria automation and kind of step them through the process. And they were so thankful at the end of that. They they never seen that documented anywhere. And then to have that in my lab and working and go through the process, they were it's yeah, it just makes you feel good. since
Yeah.
I'm new to the territory, what was interesting is this customer was following my blogs and my videos before I became their SE. And when they heard that I was going to be covering their account, they were very happy. So there again, the whole community, doing the sessions at VM Explorer or doing VMugs and putting the content out there and letting people watch it or read what you do, you'd be surprised who reads that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the consumers are that they're ending up now. They're my customers, that I'm going to help, and now they want me to join bi-weekly or monthly calls and just kind of go over things, and they're very happy to have me on board. So.
Yeah, even when you said, Dale, that you listen to this podcast from time to time and you're excited to be on it, it's kind of like I kind of go like, oh wow, that I see numbers on this stuff, but it doesn't equate anything to me. Like it's Wednesday, noon to 1. We do a podcast. They're not very good, right? They're very community oriented. We're exposing people. We're not like rocket scientists trying to figure out deep. Sometimes Matt goes deep on topics, but it is good that we're contributing to the community, and and then if people appreciate it and consume your stuff, and the next thing you know, somebody recognizes you and go, oh yeah, I listened to your stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but it is good. That's what giving community is about. Right? So,
yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Matt's name. Matt and I both live in Pennsylvania, and we were both members of the Central Pennsylvania VMUG, which is where I met Matt. And then there's a company between Harrisburg and the Pittsburgh area that would host these little hacks. So I would drive. It's like a 2-hour drive for me, and Matt was a little closer, so we met there also. And one year when we were there at the little hack, doing presentations and stuff, he said, "Hey, you should really apply for the V-Expert program because you're blogging. You've done the V Brown Bag. You're very involved." So I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea," and I got accepted. So that was in 2020. So this is my 4th year, and I give a lot of that credit to meeting Matt and him encouraging the people at that little hack to get more involved in the V-Expert program. So
it is funny because the first time I met Matt, I think I had him on the podcast once, right, for some topic that I got to have him on the podcast and met him, but wouldn't have remembered him a year later. But then I ended up at the Pennsylvania VMUG somewhere in Pittsburgh, I think, or somewhere where they had a hackathon at the user group. They had a user group hackathon, and I got to go attend, right, and bring some T-shirts and giveaways and stuff like that. And my son was at Carnegie Mellon, so it was nice because I was in town and I could say hello to my son and then come by the hackathon and spend the evening with everybody there. Matt was there at the time, so you might have been there as well, for all I remember. But yeah,
a lot of the Pittsburgh hackathons were run by Ariel Sanchez.
Sure, Ariel.
A lot of the people in the V community are going to know that name. And sure. for VMware Explore this year, he put a tweet out there, said, "Hey, I'm going to have this team at the hackathon. Is there any interest?" And I never met Ariel, but we had conversations. And when I was a customer, he was even my TAM for a while. So I said, "Hey, if I'm going to Explore, I would love to join your team." So I joined his team, and he came up with the topic, and we started, coming up with the ideas and content and stuff.
So let's transition to that. What was your idea?
So what my team, so like I originally started out on Ariel's team, and then he had too many people on his team, and they wanted to keep it to 6 people. So he's like, "Hey, your idea is pretty cool, and it's a little bit different. So why don't you become a captain of a hackathon team, and we'll ask for volunteers to join your team." So So that's what we did. I'm like, okay, it's my first time at the hackathon, but sure, I'll be a captain. So what my idea was within Aria. So with Ariel, he was documenting as a home lab person all the different websites that you could go to learn about AI and ML and different ways to install it in your environments. And so what I was doing is I kind of took what he did and was actually starting to put it into like a production within my home lab. So he's like, hey, since you're slightly different, yeah, take that, make your own team. So there's a PowerShell module called PowerShell AI that you can set up a Chat GPT API account and make requests to Chat GPT and have it return information to you. So when we were talking about the home lab, the things that I always hear people ask about is I don't know how to use PowerCLI. I don't know how to write scripts, or I don't know how to create state files. So what we came up with and my team helped. It was a great team. And I'll say that we came up with a way to have a catalog item within the Aria automation product that it was a custom form, and we would help people build the conversation with ChatGPT. So we had like a drop down that would say, what's the topic? So maybe the topic was PowerShell. So then we had like 4 questions. It would say, I want to create a PowerShell script to, connect to vCenter, find every VM that has a snapshot, and then export that as a CSV file. And we had a lot of details in that. And we would submit that to ChatGPT. And within the form, we had a window that it would return the code for the users to test in their lab. So,
well, is there a Chat GPT module that returns PowerShell code, or was that your module, or do they already have a PowerShell coding?
They didn't, but that's where there's a guy in the PowerShell community. His name's Doug Fink, that created this module. So since that saved my team a lot of coding, we used that module. And what you could do is we helped. So the whole idea, what I hear from customers is we don't know how to ask the questions properly to get the good code back. So we would help them build the conversation within the form so that you would, through our testing, you would get good code back that you could then test and maybe even move into production. So during all our testing, we've actually found that you should never go right to production. Definitely test in your lab or something, but you could get some really good responses depending on how you ask the questions. And when you hear those terms about being a prompt engineer, it's kind of what my team was doing. We were created this form. We would help you build this question. We would send it to ChatGPT, and then we'd come back with some good scripts. We were doing scripts to create workflows in Orchestrator, PowerShell scripts. We would do one thing I hear from customers sometimes is they'll say, hey, we're already using Ansible and we have Ansible playbooks. So one of the processes that we had in our hackathon project was to take an existing Ansible playbook, and we said to ChatGPT, create a salt state file for us so that we could use that within the Aria product. And it came back with the code that it would convert the Ansible code to salt, which was pretty neat.
I'm going to have to follow up with you after this podcast, because the code lab we did for the code labs, when you were in the code theater, you noticed behind there were little nooks and little displays, whatever. The code lab, all we did was show you for that lab. We had to take you through ChatGPT, the ins and outs, best way to formulate. I gave you kind of some introduction. Then we connected you, showed you how to set up your key management so that you would have your key so that you could actually then do API requests, right? But then we were like, we really need a good example on, doing something like with PowerShell or something, but we didn't know. We did talk about how to make a module, like how to, register a module and, set it up so that you can use that module from a server. But we didn't ever do that, and we didn't have a good example. We gave you like, here's how to make a website, right? Or here's how to integrate your JSON object back from ChatGPT and display it in a website. But we should follow up with you and see if we can make use of the Mr. Fink's module, because then we could actually give it a question and say, hey, give me some, PowerShell back to deploy a VM or something, and allow that to happen. So that's cool.
Yeah, because a lot of the programs that, even if you go out to ChatGPT's website, it's a blank slate. So you still have to come up with how to ask the question, and that was a big part.
And that's what our lab did too. Our lab took you through what are the best ways to get the responses you want, what's variable, what's not. That kind of thing.
If you use terms like act as an SRE or act as a DBA to kind of start that conversation, you would be surprised how different the responses can be returned to you. So, yeah, hopefully some people will see that and show some interest. And if I was still a customer, I absolutely would take what we created as a team and have that in my production environment to help me write code.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's, for me, the most interesting thing about ChatGPT is the fact that it writes so much code, right? And like I was saying earlier, I'm dumb. So like anybody that can help me, and if ChatGPT can go help me write code, give me that. The old adage is nobody starts from scratch. There's no such thing as a program that's written 100% by you, right? You always start with somebody and then edit it. And I think ChatGPT is just an automated, nicer way of getting the sample you need to start with in order to go, make it do what you need it to do, right? So I think that's pretty cool.
So if there's anybody listening that's thinking about the hackathon, I would definitely encourage you to get involved. It was a great experience.
Let's talk about the hackathon in general. I think there were like 10 teams or 8 teams or something like that. Were you able to work with your team members, and did you guys actually write some code together?
The team was formed like a month before Explore.
Right. Sure.
So we had weekly Zoom sessions. We were an international team. The one person on the team was from Germany, one was from Costa Rica, one was from Alabama, one from Ohio, and 2 from Pennsylvania. So,
nice.
using our tools that we use every day, Zoom, we would create this session.
Did you put your code on a GitHub account somewhere?
Yep. We created a GitHub repository. So as people would go out and do some testing on how they wanted to create the conversations and stuff, we would share the code. We shared a PowerPoint presentation file out there that anybody from the team could come in there and add content. And the team was just, I had a really good team. So yeah, everybody worked together well, and everybody had a good time. And
I see in the background you have a oh, I'm getting an echo, but that's okay. Yeah,
there it's gone.
Fine. You have a trophy. You came in second, 2023, yes. Right? What came in first? How did you guys get beat?
The first place was a really good idea. They used the Tanzu application service, and what they did is they had a customer join the team that they would record all the conversations that they had with their customer support. So then they would take that voice recordings and turn it into text, and they created their own private large language models. So that way, when they would work with the data, it was only their data, it was private data. So I think if you would take the first place team's idea of creating your own LLM, and then use our team's idea of if we were creating an LLM for programming languages, use my team's idea to help them build the conversations. I think the combination of the two would be a really nice solution.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. It is interesting that the first top two were AI ML kind of oriented, around. That's neat. Building their own LLM, doing audio to voice to text to get the data, put the
Right.
data in an LLM format so that you can get at it, and then now they've got their own plugin. Yeah, so.
Yep.
That's interesting. Oh, my audio came back right. Yeah,
Yep.
interesting. There you go. Got some audio. So okay, so 1, 2. How was the evening? And would you recommend people that are considering going to Europe join a team?
I would. Yeah, to meet some of the judges was a really good experience for me. Alan,
I know
when
Alan Renouf showed up, and some of the other big names in the community
and,
came. Yeah.
and when Alan, each of the judges came around to each team had their own table, so the judges would come to each table individually, and you met all the judges. So when Alan came to my table, William Lamb was with him, so I actually got to meet Alan and William at the same time. And as being an automation person with my background, it was just a really good experience to meet them, and then Alan had some really good recommendations. He even asked, now that you've done this project for the hackathon, what are you going to do with it? He even said, hey, would you ever think about turning it into a fling that
Sure.
could be released to the community to see if there would be interest beyond just doing the hackathon? And then the one other judge who kind of stood out for me is, like Chris Wolf is CTO of VMware. So to be able to sit beside the CTO of VMware and kind of show him what we came up with as a team and demo it, and then to take his feedback that he provided, that was just a really great experience.
Yeah, gotta say we had big names there, and I was pretty excited about the fact that we did have as many good judges there as we did members. And so I did a drive-by, but for the hackathon, but I think everybody was off. There was like a moment like from 5 to 7 or something like that, where everybody went up to the hall crawl or whatever was going on, the party. And I think I drove by when everybody was gone, and I looked and there were like 7 people sitting around. I'm like, oh, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to make them feel bad. So I actually turned around and left because I felt guilty that there was nobody there, and I didn't want Cami and who's the guy that ran it? Forget his name now, but
Yeah,
Vladimir.
Yeah.
I didn't want Vlad and Cami to feel bad that I showed up and there was nobody there and it was like a dud. But later I learned that no, everybody was up at the hall crawl, and there was teams, they were there, and I saw the pictures at the end. I'm like, okay, because I actually bailed because I felt like, oh my God, I don't want to embarrass them, because they put a lot of work into it and only 7 people showed up. Right? So,
yeah, for my team was 6 people, and only half of them were able to make it in person. So what we wanted to be ready, and I wanted participation from the whole team. So we kind of showed up ready to go. So we didn't really do a lot of coding at the hackathon, but then there was other teams that they didn't start until they showed up. So it's really, it's up to you as a team on how you want to do it. So,
and I had actually told Cami that you should have 2 categories of awards. I don't know if she ended up doing that or not. One for people that just started coding that evening, and another set for people that have been working for a month as a team. But I don't know how that worked out. But nonetheless, it sounded like a good invite, and I love the pictures at the end. It was a lot of fun. Hey, we do ask our guests also as we come up for the last 15 minutes, what do you think is going to be exciting over the next year? What do you look at and go, oh, I'm looking forward to tech over the next, and it's either VMware tech or some other tech. I always ask guests like, what gets you excited over the next year, and what keeps you up at night?
What gets me excited is probably what we kind of been talking about, and I've been in IT for, boy, I hate to age myself, for quite a few years, I'll just say.
Obviously, me too.
So things in my career that, one of the first things that probably really impressed me in IT was like when I did my first vMotion. I remember that as being, hey, I can move this running VM from one server to the next and not take downtimes, and that's still something that still really impresses me. So the second thing I would probably say during my career is what we did at the hackathon, the AI stuff, to be able to come up with these conversations and have a program help me write
Code
code,
written from it. Yeah.
because when I first started in automation, I would go to Google or some other search engines and say, hey, I want a PowerShell script to do this, and you would find different examples. So to get that from something like ChatGPT or even some of the other AI products that are out there is really exciting. And I know VMware demoed that with like Aria Hub, where during the one presentation they said, show me all the VMs that your memory usage is 90% or greater, and then boom, there's all your VMs, and then they would even show you the code that they used for GraphGL to kind of to generate that view. Um, it's exciting. That's exciting to me to help people get into automation that maybe aren't programmers, and that's kind of how I kind of consider myself. I was a VMware admin that I worked at this one healthcare system. They owned Aria Automation, and it wasn't really being used. So the architect came to me and said, I want to give you this project. Well, not knowing that one question would change my my whole career path. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do that. So to get started, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to start writing scripts. But what was interesting, if you take like a VI admin and you get them into automation, they don't need to think about the processes. They need to think more about how to code it. Where if you take somebody that's really good in coding, but doesn't understand how the VMware products work, so now you're explaining all these steps. So it was, I think it was just a good experience for me to be that VMware admin, to get into automation and understand the processes that it takes. So yeah, to have something help me with the code, or like when I first got into using Salt to, writing state
Mm.
files and stuff like that was brand new. It was day zero. When I installed that after VMware purchased the product, I'm like, okay, now I need to learn how to write, state files. And if I had a product that was only what 3 years, 2 years ago. If I would have even had it back then to be able to help create state files, that would have definitely got me up and running in production quicker. So that's exciting for me.
Nice, nice. I know. I'm excited about home labs. I'm a geeky guy that I just you said something that just sparked memory, and I went off in my own little zone there for a minute, which is like, do you remember where you were when you first did a vMotion? Right. And I was like, oh, I had two Sun 4100s. They were like single core machines. So like, but I remembered like, oh my God, I just motioned an OS over to a new machine, and like, there it was, right? Like, could turn this one off and didn't miss anything. And I had like 3 VMs set up or whatever. It's like, it is one of those things. I like building machines. So it is fun to be able to have virtual machines. And where were you when? Right.
And I think people, vMotion has been around for so long that people just take it for granted now. But some things that people forget about going to the cloud, if you create a cloud native VM, and I think just about any of the different companies, you can't vMotion that to another host and not take it downtime. You have to power off that VM and have it start up on another host if they need to do maintenance to host. So that is still a product that I think is still blows my mind every time I do a vMotion, and it's still very useful because you still can't do that in cloud native.
Right. You can't. You just, unless
You
you have a
just need
VM underneath.
you need to develop your applications and stuff in a way that you can turn one off while the other one, through load balancers. So it's a whole different process. But to have a single VM for an application to not take that downtime is still an amazing feature.
Well, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour, so let's just recap. Dale Hassinger, great to spend an hour with you and chat about what you did, the hackathon. If you're considering a hackathon, I know we're going to be running one at Explore, so go check that out in Europe, in Barcelona, so that'll be cool. you're in Pennsylvania. So
Yeah.
question for you. Do you do barbecue in Pennsylvania? Matt Longa has a gas grill. That's all he's managed to muster up, right? Like, do you ever get outside in the summertime to do some grilling?
Oh yeah, I have a smoker that I'll do like pork shoulders and stuff like that. I love to do barbecuing. And then when I don't want to do it myself, probably a mile from my house is a really good barbecue place that I go and get it when I don't want to
And
take a
where are
whole
you
day.
in Pennsylvania?
I live in a town, it's called Dillsburg. It's just south of Harrisburg, which is the state capital.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
there's nice barbecue place there.
Very good. Very good. Well, Dale, thanks for coming on the podcast and being with us for sharing your stories with the community for the hour. I really appreciate it. Are you on Twitter, and can people follow you?
Oh yes, I am on Twitter. It's at my name, Dale Hassinger. I do have a blog site. The blog site's
Yeah,
called
you have to tell me how vcrocs.info showed up. So his blog, I should have said that earlier in the show. Sorry.
yeah,
www.vcrocs.info. CROCS.
yes,
Vcrocs.
Crocs.
So do you raise crocodiles in your backyard or something in
No,
Pennsylvania?
it's based on the shoe, the Crocs, the shoe.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, short story. Some of my coworkers that I used to work with would make fun of me wearing Crocs, and within the community, we always talk about the
Yep.
V community. There's V brisket, V beers, and
Yeah,
so
sure.
I told my team members at the time, I'm going to start blogging and I'm going to call it V Crocs, and they're like, no, you're not. So I'm like, yes, I am, and it kind of stuck. So I bought the domain name, and anytime you see me presenting, I will always be wearing a pair of Crocs.
Nice. I know you had one article out there on area operations, right? 8.1.2 release. So we found that article, and then Matt recommended you, so brought you in here. So you've been blogging on VCrocs. You got a Twitter handle, which is your whole name, Dale, Dale, Hassinger, Hassinger. So I guess you would look at
Yes.
Dale Hassinger. So you're at Dale Hassinger.
Yes.
All right, there you go. Go give him a follow and say hello to him. It's good to see you on there. Go look at V Barbecue, youtube.com/V Barbecue, VBARBECUE, because there's multiple ways to spell barbecue across the United States, just like there's multiple ways of doing barbecue. And pork shoulder, I haven't done a pork shoulder in a long time. I'm gonna have to go get my smoker going and get me a nice shoulder. What weight of shoulder do you smoke?
I usually stay on the smaller side because it's just my
Okay.
wife and I, two people. So, and
15 pounds, good enough. Yeah, nice.
yeah, that should be plenty. Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
and then you'll have
It's a big one.
leftovers, really good
Yeah,
leftovers for a couple days.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I did a brisket. I don't like beef that much. I am a big pork fan, so I'm gonna have to go do a pork shoulder. That'll be fun.
I would love to have something to be able to do a whole pig.
That should be one of our, we should go do that. We're talking about getting a used motorhome and then just putting the community show on the road and drive around and do some fun stuff. Right. And as we could dig a hole and do one in the ground, the Hawaiian style. That would be kind of neat. Right. Do a smoked one in the underground, but then also do one on a spit. We did that at, I think, Vegas in 2018 or 2017. We actually had a barbecue restaurant come and do it in the Pinball Museum back lot where they had a whole pig. It's kind of fun, right? It's still just pork, right? So yeah.
The town I grew up in as a child had a community event every year, and they would roast a whole pig and then share it with the community, and that was some of my best memories of barbecue. Was that as a child.
Yeah. It is fun. It is interesting too. Some of my happier memories are, 4th of July barbecues as well, right? Everybody come together in the backyard and play horseshoes and, have soda pop and then barbecue and, corn and all the other stuff that you do all together. It's a great community. That's why V Barbecue for me was a great name, because it is about coming together, drinking beer, sodas, whatever, playing horseshoes, whatever your games are, whether it's pinball or horseshoes or you name it, coming together and just having a great social experience with everybody that works together. So yeah, it is cool. Yeah. Dale, thanks for coming on the show. As always, Wednesday, 12 to 1, we live stream, publish on YouTube. Thanks a lot for being here. I appreciate that. And congrats to second place. Next year, you're going to go for the number 1.
Well, yeah, my team said we're going to stick together and do it again. So
Do it
everybody
again.
had a good time. So
Yeah.
like I said, I would definitely encourage anybody thinking about it, get more involved.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. With that, everybody go get some. It's lunchtime here in California. Go get some barbecue, and we'll be back again next week. Until then, have a great day.